Hey, Kerry.
How's it going, Mr. Chair?
Hey, good, Kerry. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good, Kerry. On the screen, is there supposed to be like a screen where I see everybody, or do you do that at 10 o'clock?
That'll probably activate once you gavel us to start. But you should be right now. I'm not seeing your screen, but we should. You may have to change your gallery view if it's in individual view.
Switch. I see the switch camera blurb.
Yeah, you might have turned it around because there you go. Welcome back. And then on the right of the screen, it should be the grid to show all the participants. But I also do have a slide open to just let people know what the hearing's about. And then once we gavel to start, I'll clear that and then you'll see everyone.
Okay. Thanks, Kerry.
No problem at all.
Hey, Kerry, is it okay if I start?
Absolutely. I'm having a little issue bringing over Council Braden up. She's in. Yep, ready when you are, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is Boston City Councilor Ed Flynn of District 2. Good morning, everybody. This is Boston City Councilor Ed Flynn from District 2. Thanks for attending this hearing. I'm the chair of the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. In accordance with Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 executive order modifying certain requirements of the open meeting law and relieving public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirements that the public bodies conduct its meeting in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public. The City Council will be conducting this hearing virtually. This enables the City Council to carry out its responsibilities while adhering to public health recommendations and ensuring public access in its deliberations through adequate alternative means. The public hearing is being recorded and live streamed on www.boston.gov/citycouncil-TV. It will also be rebroadcast at a later date on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, and Fios 964. Anyone that would like to testify on this matter, please email ron.cobb, C-O-B-B, @boston.gov for the Zoom link. Today's hearing is on docket number 0863. It's an order for a hearing to discuss pest control and illegal dumping in the city of Boston. The matter is sponsored by myself, Councilor Edwards, Lydia Edwards, and Councilor Braden, Liz Braden, and was referred to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services on July 21st, 2021. At this time, I am joined by my colleagues in order of arrival, Councilor Liz Braden, let's see. I'm going to hold off on my opening remarks. I'm going to ask Councilor Braden to open it up with her opening remarks. But before I do that, just want to thank the panelists for being here. Greatly appreciate your time, but also more importantly for the great work that you're doing throughout all of the neighborhoods of Boston, especially during this difficult time. The invited panelists include Brian Coughlin, who's the superintendent of waste reduction from the Department of Public Works. I believe he'll be giving an open remarks. John Blackmore, who's an inspector at Department of Public Works, will also be here to answer questions. John Ulrich, who's the Assistant Commissioner, Environmental Services at Inspectional Services. I know the administration may have to leave at 11, so we'll make sure we get the questions into you before that. We also have a community panel, including Mary Chen from the Asian American Civic Association, Anthony Desidoro, who's the president of the Alston Civic Association, and John Pikowski, if I'm pronouncing the name incorrectly, I apologize, ASCA Construction and IT Specialist. At this time, I'm going to open it up to my colleague, Councilor Braden, who is an original co-sponsor. Councilor Braden, thank you for your work on this important issue.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn, and thank you for all the folks from all the city departments that are here this morning. It's really, this issue it's a perennial issue, and it just it's a gift that keeps giving. So the biggest concerns out in Alston Brighton are really with regard to rodent control. And I know I took a walk out with Pat McDonough last week, and we did a little rat safari, as we call it. And, you know, we do see the challenges of in trying to address this issue. And we just wanted to check in. Me personally just wanted to check in with the departments today, get an update on where we're at. Are we able to use dry ice to the extent that we would like to? And also see what we're doing with regard to a public information campaign. It just seems that with, the city alone can't fix this problem. It needs to have a partnership with businesses and residents and landlords, and all working on the same page to try and address this really distressing issue, especially for families in the neighbourhood when they can't even let their children play in their yards because rodents are running around. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. We're also joined by our colleague, Councilor Lydia Edwards, an original co-sponsor. Councilor Edwards, would you like to provide an opening statement?
Yeah, thank you. And I echo the thanks of my colleagues to you, Brian, John, and John, for the work you're doing. And I see this as a collaborative conversation, really in trying to figure out how we as representatives can respond to some of the concerns we're hearing, and also just in what is to come from the city, and also just to bring some of the suggestions from residents and see if we can't get this particular issue, at least in East Boston. As you know, Brian, there's an increase, you know, in some of the rats, and a lot of that has, I think, to do with the amount of development that's going on. And I know developers are supposed to do some abatement. We're working on getting some of the utility companies to also do some pre and post abatement work as well. So for us, it's really just, you know, is this a seasonal thing? I'm hoping, because we didn't really have this issue before, this is something that is going to be overcome. And what resources? I know Councilor Braden brought up dry ice. We brought up, you know, when I think Buddy was the head of ISD, dry ice was either too expensive or there was a real concern about the toxicity of it. And so I just want to make sure that we're, you know, all the tools in the toolbox, as well as public education campaign. You know, a lot of folks are even saying maybe we should be pushing and enforcing the barrel, you know, obligations a little bit more for private properties. You know, people are just putting their trash bags out there. Obviously, any pest can get through that. So if we brought more barrels back, if we made sure that we were really having people do all of their parts, and then on top of that, making sure that those who are developing do extra parts. I think we can get this underhand, and I see this as a partnership conversation, and I really appreciate you all being here today.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards, and thank you, Councilor Braden. I didn't give an opening statement, but I'll just be very brief. I just want to echo what my colleagues, Councilor Edwards and Braden, mentioned. The importance of quality of life for our residents, especially our seniors and persons with disabilities, in families. We want to make sure our city is clean and healthy. We also want to make sure that people are educated on the proper way to take their trash out. And as Councilor Braden mentioned, public awareness, public education is certainly a major part of that, including in my district, where I have many residents that speak a language other than English. So we want to focus on that issue, but also an issue that I've focused on is illegal dumping. I'm very frustrated with what I see in Chinatown. People thinking that they're able to dump their trash anywhere. A lot of it is from construction companies. I wish I had the vehicles and the license plates of the people that are dumping it. I'd like to increase the fines, but they want to dump their trash in West Roxbury or one of these other neighborhoods or Beacon Hill, but you can come into Chinatown and dump it there as if these residents are insignificant. So, I'm really concerned about the illegal dumping of trash in that neighborhood. And I know the city of Boston is as well. I know you're equally concerned about it. So thank you. Having said that, let me open it up to Brian or the two Johns, however you guys want to start. Maybe Brian, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Councilor. Brian Coughlin, City of Boston Public Works, Superintendent of Waste Reduction. To keep the opening brief so we can get some questions, and all three of you councilors have made some great points about certain issues in the city that we can address. I just wanted to congratulate John Blackmore, our new Director of Code Enforcement to the City of Boston. He's doing great with our team. So, Councilor, to the last point that you made about the illegal dumping in Chinatown, we can cite properties when there's evidence. As you said, a bag or two or a pickup truck, we really can't get a violator. So we need those plate numbers, we need pictures, we need whatever we can do to do an investigation. What we're seeing is a lot of single bags or a few bags here and there with no evidence. And, I want to bring attention to the fact that, we need to think about why people are doing that. It's not just to make a mess in Chinatown or West Roxbury, Hyde Park, Beacon Hill. The cost of disposal for that material far exceeds the cost for trash that we pick up at the curb. Construction material, demolition material, asphalt, brick, concrete, that material can be somewhat up to 3 times the amount that we pay for trash. So when we're looking at small companies that are going around and, especially during COVID, it makes sense why there's illegal dumping. It's not to justify it, but it's to certainly look at a bigger issue of the cost because of the lack of capacity in the state. And, it's more towards pricing and capacity than I would say behavior and just, wanting to trash our city. As much as we'd all like to find those people and make sure that they're cited properly, I think we need to address at some point down the line a better way to address the capacity issues in the state for that material, so people don't have to pay those high costs. And and we can probably work with the state to try to help do that for the residents. But that's my thought on that last piece. So we can just go, if you want to go to ISD, that's fine. So we just have some time for questions, but I just wanted to start with that illegal dumping piece.
Sure. We can go to ISD. John, do you want to offer opening comments?
Sure, Chairman Flynn, councilors, thanks for having me. I will try to keep it brief too. I have 13 environmental health inspectors citywide. We enforce the sanitary code in regards to trash and rodents. We also run a site cleanliness program, which it establishes property management standards around dumpsters, bulk refuse. And our fines for violations for that is $1,000, which is issued by code enforcement. So code enforcement works very closely with us. I think it was Councilor Braden mentioned education. Education really is our best tool to combat rodent activity. And we have a bunch of educational stuff that we literature that we drop on stairs at homes and neighborhoods across the city. And we have those in 6 different languages. They all have scan codes on them, so they can scan their phone and it will bring them directly to our City of Boston website with more information about rodent control. There was I think Councilor Edwards mentioned construction. So how we deal with construction is a community sanitation requirement. So when there is a long form, a short form demo, soil pits or soil borings, we require pest control, an inspection and pest control on site. We have been asking construction sites to keep the pest control throughout the project. Usually that is the perimeter of the lot. Usually if construction is going to cause rodent issue, it's at the very beginning of the project. And sometimes during it, if construction workers aren't maintaining their lunches or trash that they're producing while they're building. But usually the issue happens at the beginning of the construction. So we have really increased our soil baiting program, which contributes to rodent activity in the neighborhood when there's breaches in the soil pipes. We do have regulations that we require Boston Water and Sewer to do, to bait before, monitor before they ever open up a sewer. Those are requirements based on the activity in the neighborhood. And the last thing I'll say is dry ice. Dry ice has, we are not using dry ice as much as we'd like to. It is difficult to get dry ice and to use it in a consistent manner. We have to buy a label in Woburn, and we have to go to Rockland to pick up the ice, which is, I think it's about 60 miles in rush hour traffic to get back to the city. So it's difficult. We are looking at ways to use dry ice and also other products. We're using a product called the Giant Destroyer, which is more of you light it, and it's a carbon monoxide that you stick into like a smoke bomb. You stick into the burrows. That works similarly to dry ice. So we've had some success with that, and we're looking at other fumigant products to address especially rodents in the parks. Those are the places where you really would use dry ice and the fumigants. So I will give it back to you for questions.
Thank you, John. John Blakemore, congratulations on code enforcement. The promotion that you received, you're doing an excellent job. John, do you have any opening statement that you'd like to provide?
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate that. I'm just going to echo exactly what Brian said. When it comes to the illegal dumping, license plates, makes of the models of the truck, it's paramount that we get that information, because that's pretty much ties our hands if we don't have that, especially when it comes to a lot of the construction debris that's being dumped around the city. Nobody wants to see it. We'd love to get it under control, but it's paramount that we get that information.
Thank you, John. At this time, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. I'm going to start with Councilor Braden, and I'll go after Councilor Braden, or if any of my other colleagues join us, I'll go last. But at this time, I'd like to open it up to Councilor Braden from Alston and Brighton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering with regard to the whole dry ice issue. I understand it's really difficult, and I understand the logistics of getting it from Rockland up to Boston in a timely fashion, but is there any way we could acquire it more locally? Why is that the only supplier we have in the greater Boston area?
Yes, Councilor Braden. So the requirement when they originally, when Boston started to use it, Leo Bulger had started the program. It wasn't regulated as a pesticide. And so we could go right to an ice company and buy dry ice. We were told to stop by the EPA, and then they came out with a system with a label and to use it as a pesticide, even though the chemical makeup is not any different than what we were using from, like a Brookline ice. And so you have to purchase the label, and then the contract is with one provider in Rockland. So if we could get a provider, a waiver or something like that to use a dry ice supplier in the city, that would change it. But unfortunately, the last 2 times we have tried to go to Rockland for dry ice, they have been out of dry ice. There was a issue with a supply coming from Canada, they said. And so they didn't have any dry ice, and it was the only location we could go to.
Okay. And in terms of getting a waiver, what's the procedure for getting a waiver that we could try and secure these products a little more locally? Do we have to go to the state for that?
It's federally regulated, so I think the state maybe. My answer, I'm not really sure.
That's probably something we should look into and see if we can expedite this supply chain. Okay. And then the other question that we come across very often, and it sort of relates more to illegal dumping and the challenges of just a homeowner who has to replace their toilet. Is there any legal way for them to dispose of their toilet? It's a perennial problem. We get a couple of calls a year about how to dispose of your bathroom equipment that is broken. Have you any suggestions, or is there a central location somewhere that people can take a toilet to dispose of it, in the city? That's it, rather than just leaving it on the side of the road somewhere.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor. So I've had some discussions with Re-Energy in Roxbury, which is the local construction demolition facility. It's mainly contractors going in there. It's obviously an industrial site. They're not too keen on residents walking in or coming in with their trucks on the scale house and stuff like that. But we could certainly expand on those conversations to try to figure something out for the resident that has a couple of things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I typically recommend someone call a commercial hauler that handles construction demolition debris, that they can actually remove it and take it with them. And the resident doesn't have to do any of the lifting and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it is part of a waste ban from the Mass DEP for the regular trash. So that's why we don't see any, you're not taking it with the regular curbside material. So there's a lot of things that, throughout the years, there was a day where we used to take all the construction and just take everything. And the city's disposal costs were through the roof. They're still high, but there's far less trash being disposed of. And down the road, a few years, there'll be more materials that the state's going to want us to pull out and process separately. So, we're doing a good job at reducing what we're doing now. We just need to create more access. And like I said in the beginning, the capacity needs to be there for the resident to have that option. So we need to work with our state partners to try to boost the opportunities and create more access for our residents.
Yeah, so something like the hazardous waste days that would have maybe 2 or 3 days a year where you could bring your disposable, your porcelain from your bathroom that's broken or whatever. You could there's definitely some creative ways we should be looking at that.
Yeah, it's not that the resident can't throw it away, and it's not that there's no opportunities, but again, it comes down to that, the same reason why there's illegal dumping. It's because the access is limited and there's not, it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's not cheap to throw away a pickup truck full of material, even to take a toilet or something. There's probably a minimum fee that they charge at the facilities, as well as pedestrian traffic and residential traffic coming through. It's more of an industrial zone, commercial trucks. So it can be very dangerous on site. So I'm sure that weighs into it as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like we should probably continue this conversation and try and find some solutions that work for the regular householder to get rid of stuff. Okay, thank you. And then the rodent issues with regard to early baiting, is there a timeline for construction companies to begin baiting a project before they start? Is there a timeline, and how often are they expected to bait?
Councilor Braden, so we require them to have pest control on site before. It's usually about 2 weeks before there's a shovel in the ground or the project is demoed, but it's really regulated by rodent activity. So until there is no rodent activity, they shouldn't start demo or start construction until there is no sign. So they would have to put pest control on site. They're able to monitor the rodent activity by the consumption of bait in the boxes. And then based on that, they would start the project. So when they get the community sanitation sign off, that goes to one of our inspectors, and then they go out and inspect the property for rodent activity.
Okay, and then the indicators that the inspector's looking for is they go and look at the boxes and see that there's no rats in no dead rats or no sign of rats in the boxes over a few days, and then they get the all clear. Is that how it works?
So there wouldn't be normally there isn't traps in those boxes. It's bait, and so the pest control company would provide us with pest control reports. That's required when they get the initial permit sign off of community sanitation. And then our inspectors would go out and check for rodent activity, the regular signs, burrows on the property, droppings, stuff like that. Okay.
I'm learning so much about rats these days. It's a whole new world. Thank you, John. Councillor Flynn, that's all my questions for now.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. And my line of questioning, John, was similar to Councillor Braden. With the amount of development I have ongoing in South Boston and other areas in Chinatown on the south end, developers tell me that they are baiting and they're on top of this issue, but I don't see it. So, what is the city's responsibility when a developer, starts digging? What is the developer's responsibility, obligation during the construction phase and after the construction phase?
The responsibility is that the property is rodent free, and that pest control, what we require now is pest control throughout the project, before the project starts, during construction, and if there's rodent activity on the property after the completion of the project, then they're required to have pest control. And so our inspectors would go back. We do site visits. If we're driving down the street and we see a construction site without visible boxes, we'll get out and check their log books or ask them to provide a pest control report. And then we bait sewers. So if there's a lot of construction in the area, we set out a grid and do an aggressive soil baiting program to make sure that that isn't contributing.
Thank you, John. I know you and the inspectors take this issue very seriously. I just don't think the contractors or the developers take this issue seriously. And, you know, I know the city of Boston inspectors are out there every day and night working on this. But my issue is with the construction phase, the developers and the contractors. When we have major pest control issues, the first person they call is the district city councilor. So we can't, as a district city councilor, these are the most important issues that we focus on. So it's important for us to make sure that, you know, we hold these developers and contractors and everybody else accountable, because it's the quality of life of residents. It's our parents live there, and our seniors live there, and persons with disabilities and young families. So we need to have a healthy neighborhood. I'm just concerned that other people don't take this issue as seriously as we do.
I understand, Councilor. The best way to prevent rodents is by maintaining trash, especially in residential areas. So construction, like I said at the beginning, sometimes construction can disturb rodent activity if it's on the property. But rodent activity is really driven by harborage, places where they can nest. They usually nest about 150 feet from a food source. And the biggest food sources in the city that we see is trash is the number one. People feeding birds or bird feeders sometimes cause rodent activity. And then the other one is not cleaning up after their pets. That can be a food source for rodents. So we go out and use education, use we have the ownership tool in 311 is really the best way. If you see a rodent issue, call in the complaint. The quicker that we're able to address it, the better, so it doesn't spread. And those are the things that work. Pest control works far better if we eliminate the other food sources, water sources, and harborage. So the enforcement of the sanitary code, even when it doesn't involve rats, is important for the rodent issue.
Thank you, John. I guess my final question before we go to the panelists, maybe it's for Brian. Brian, can you just tell me, I try to use this as an opportunity to educate people that are listening, but can you just tell us the proper way to take out your garbage?
Sure. So, Councilor, let's talk the day before trash day, the days before. If you're going to leave your bags outside, everything needs to be contained. If it's in a barrel, it needs to have a lid. Anything that does not have a lid on the side of the house is subject to a violation. You know, you're just asking for a rat, or if it's an unclosed alleyway, you're looking for a scavenger to come in and look for bottles or take anything off the property from the trash. So the best thing to do is to make sure that everything's contained. So unfortunately, in a lot of areas of the city, there's not many. If they don't have a backyard or an alleyway, it's very difficult to do that. But any trash that's left outside by itself in a bag on a non-collection day is subject to a violation.
Okay. But can you take your garbage out on the time you're supposed to take it out in a garbage bag, not in a barrel though?
The night before, typically after 5 p.m. and before collection, so 6 a.m. So that's the time that it needs to be out for the collection.
Brian,
yeah. No, go ahead, Councilor Braden.
So I'm slightly confused. So you can put a bag out on the side of the street overnight, and not in a bin, or is that permissible?
Only the night before your trash collection, because we start at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And, we've tried to have people put it out in the mornings. And then we have, there's a certain, difference between people's work schedules. So we ran into a lot of issues with trying to accommodate everybody. Some people are sleeping at 6 a.m. through the afternoon and they work nights. So it's,
Yeah.
it was a difficult task to manage. We could certainly work on ways to improve on that, but it's, to get one message across to the citywide, make it simple. It was 6 a.m.
But rodents will be into a bag of trash in 5 minutes if it's sitting on the side of the street. So I'm wondering, can we enforce the requirement to have the trash put in a bin?
Well, it depends, maybe
I
in
know.
Alston, Brighton, but if I go into Councilor Flynn's area, or if I go into the North End, Beacon Hill, we're gonna have a different conversation.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as that, especially, Bay Village. We're not talking backyards and alleyways. We're talking brownstones and limited access to store trash. So that's a whole nother conversation.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Flynn, apologies for cutting in there. I was confused about that issue. Thank you.
No, thank you, Council Braden. Thanks for that important question. I guess my final question, Brian. I was working with the group in the South End, a neighborhood group, on collapsible barrels. It was a pilot program in and around Peters Park. Can you tell us what's the impact of collapsible barrels? What do they do, and how effective are they?
Well, thank you, Councilor. Yes, East Brookline Street had a pilot program a little maybe over a year ago, almost 2 years. I believe it started off with about 25 to 30 collapsible barrels distributed on the block, and we were monitoring two different styles of barrels, 2 different brands, to see what worked. As weeks went by, not too long into the program, there were less and less barrels being put out on a weekly basis, which was something that I kind of saw coming. The bags get ripped still. There's liquids and it rains, and those pop-up bins have to go back in the house. Then you can't keep the barrel outside. So again, you got to fold it up and bring it in the house. So now they're sitting in the front foyers, the corridors, in the apartments. I can only imagine what that would have smelled like. So needless to say, there's very little or none being used at this moment on Tuesdays and Fridays over there. So I don't see that as a success. Not to say it can't work somewhere, but having the homeowners maintain those, it just didn't seem like it was an idea that could stick.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Thank you, John, and thank you, John. I'm going to go to the next panel. I know you guys have to leave at 11, but if you guys can hang on till 11, and the panel might have questions, or if you want to comment on some of their issues, but if you guys can hang on for a little bit, I just want to get to the panel, and they might have some questions for you. So I want to try to engage you guys on that. So I appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you for being here, to Brian, to John, and to John. Kerry, can I bring in the next panel from the community to testify?
Bringing them over now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kerry. I see Anthony Disidoro from Alston and Brighton. Thank you, Tony, for being with us. I think you're on mute, Tony. We also have Mary Chen. I don't see Mary on the screen.
I don't see Mary either. We have a W Wang with their hand raised. Maybe that's Mary. I'll promote her.
Yeah, okay. Well, while we do that, let me ask Tony Disidora from Alston and Brighton. Tony, would you like to open it up with opening comments or a statement?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Anthony Disidoro. I am president of the Alston Civic Association. I want to thank Councilors Flynn, Edwards, and Braden for sponsoring this hearing and continuing the conversation on what is an extremely important quality of life issue. I also want to thank the city for their ongoing attention to this issue in regards to pest control and sanitation issues, inspections, public awareness campaigns, and public outreach. I am hoping that the new administration can find the resources for a truly proportional, comprehensive response to mitigate what is becoming an increasingly serious public health and safety issue in our neighborhoods. I also want to thank Councilors Braden, Edwards, and Bach for filing a hearing notice to address chronic offender landlords in the city. Enforcing building code and sanitation regulations is a piece of the puzzle that will help to minimize the conditions that contribute to a higher rodent population. When I last testified, I focused on three main areas: real estate development, property/business owners, owner accountability, and public space infestation. Major takeaways included expanding developers' responsibility for on-site rodent control, to financing rodent control activities, including baiting and trapping for direct abutters of the project, holding property business owners even more accountable to ensure proper property management by removing food and water sources and items that can provide them shelter, and the infestation levels around our public spaces, including parks, libraries, cemeteries, and schools, which violates the social compact between the city and its residents. Today, I would like to quickly focus on two additional aspects of the problem that needs attention. As you know, there are numerous alleys and passageways that were designated public in the late 1800s to be maintained by the city of Boston. Many serve as access to parking areas and dumpsters behind the houses, and on occasion as the primary entrance of apartments or condominiums in subdivided buildings. Given human nature, residents tend not to take ownership of the need to maintain these spaces, defaulting the responsibility to the city. The most volatile situation is when you have alleys and passageways that have no parking and dumpsters and only serve as a backup access to the rear of the buildings. In most cases, residents tend to use their backyards only, providing food and water resources for rodents and accessing their units exclusively from the front. These areas also serve as optimum locations for illegal dumping. The city needs to inventory these alleys and passageways, conduct regularly scheduled inspections, and mitigate conditions that can serve as a breeding ground for rodents. Many of these paths pose serious health and safety concerns for those who choose to access them. Finally, those who seek permitting, including zoning relief, whether as a matter of right or through the ZBA and/or Article 80 process. A growing problem is when the proponent begins the application process, especially when the project involves vacant buildings, including demolition. They tend to suspend maintenance of the site. We recently had a situation in Alston where the proponent was seeking permitting and zoning relief to convert a single family to a 4-family, and an inspection by me on the day of the ZBA hearing I discovered a site where trees and shrubs had engulfed the site. A poorly maintained and unsecured dumpster was on the site. Construction materials and food cups and wrappers were strewn everywhere in the backyard, and the back windows had been removed, exposing the house to infestation. These conditions, I know, contributed to their ZBA denial. This is not the first situation I have witnessed where, of course, proponents pledge to be good neighbors. BPDA and ISD must insist that sites be properly maintained throughout the permitting and zoning relief process. I realize rodent control best practices require commitment and funding. I again thank the sponsors in this committee for pursuing creative solutions with the city and elevating this issue in the public forum. We must do better and can do better with leadership that discourages residents to take matters in their own hands and disperse poison and traps in an irresponsible manner, endangering people and other forms of life. Education and outreach is critical in mobilizing property owners and residents to achieve a positive outcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony, for your important message, for your important comments, and they're greatly appreciated and helpful, especially. I just want to go back to see if Mary Chen is on the meeting. Mary, are you with us?
Yes, I am with you. I am here with Wang Wen. So thank you, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Braden, for putting this together. Those of you who know me, you know that I am over at the Asian American Civic Association, also known as AACA, and that I have been chairing on and off over the years a Clean Up Chinatown committee. I probably have a reputation in the city for being kind of pushy, but like Tony, listening to what Tony has just recited there, I think he understands the issues at hand for people who live in congested areas. But in our case, in addition to what Tony is going through, in our case, the majority of the people that I represent in terms of this Clean Up Chinatown effort are people who are mostly immigrants. I'm not saying that Tony doesn't have a lot of immigrants living in his community, but we have a lot of immigrants who really don't understand English, and maybe even more so, don't understand how systems work. So I'm eager to, tell you again, when the time is right, I would like to bring back to the table of the Clean Up Chinatown Committee the people that I have heard today, the Bryans and the Johns and the Johns. I haven't really worked with them, but we are very eager to continue to look at some of those solutions. But in the end, after so many years of struggling with working with our own community and with the city, we realize that we must go beyond the decision to educate and to do outreach. We must be a little bit hard. I think a little bit hard. We must start to increase the fines. We must even add more fines. And until people start to feel the impact on their pocketbooks, we're not going to see the changes that we need. For example, we need to clarify the fact that illegal dumping is not just bad, but it should cost much more money. And the illegal dumping isn't necessarily coming in from people who are doing construction and bringing their stuff into Chinatown or Brighton, Alston, or Beacon Hill, et cetera, et cetera. The illegal dumping is our own people who don't know when to put their trash out there. And our landlords are many times, culprit here because they don't provide the barrels. It isn't just about spacing. It isn't just about not having a backyard or an alleyway. Our own landlords do not really take care of their own tenants, and they won't even provide them with trash bags that are triple or whatever, triple ply. to protect them from rodents. So I really think we need to push hard on fining the landlords and the property owners here in Chinatown. The poor tenants here don't necessarily understand, that it's illegal. So they actually put their little trash bags outside onto the sidewalks, and the little trash bags that we're talking about are really shopping bags coming in from the Chinese supermarkets. So those things sit out there, and the rats go after them, and the seagulls are, as you all know, those of us who live in the city of Boston, you all know that the seagulls are just as troublesome to us. So more and more barrels would be important, and I think we need to have inspectional services look more closely at those who claim that they can't buy barrels for their own tenants. I really would like to look much more closely at that excuse. It is many times an excuse. During the whole pandemic, we have not met as a committee. I have therefore not had the opportunity and the pleasure of working with Brian and John. I hope they would find that it's pleasant to work with me too. But it's been a while, with the pandemic, things have really slowed down. There are trouble spots in Chinatown, and there are all the opportunities to do a cleanup Chinatown day. We should be grateful to those volunteers. But in the end, it's not that's not the solution. The solution is about finding the people, finding the landowners, the property owners, finding them, and business owners actually, finding them for abuse of the trash collection system. It's really bad. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I agree with Council Braden. I still understand why why we can't use dry ice more. That we don't want to drive over to pick that dry ice up. Why can't we work out where they deliver the dry ice to Boston? I don't get it. I mean, I don't understand it. So maybe somebody can explain it to me. And I heard that there was another way of reducing the amount of rodent activity, and that was to use some kind of almost birth control. I don't know if that is the dry ice method that you're talking about, but some kind of birth control where actually, less and less rodents can be born. I mean, I wish I'd like to hear more about that. And the curbside trash, I talked to Council Flynn about this in the past. A lot of the trash that gets put out is also being swept out onto the curbsides, and they really include the accumulation of a lot of trash that doesn't get ever picked up because they're under the cars. So I'm wondering if we could talk about redefining, where is the trash, where is the acceptable trash line? And when we get to that point and clarify that point, can we find people, even business owners, who sweep their trash out onto the curbsides and then nothing happens after that? So I'd like to talk more about that. So I will stop there, but thank you, Council Flynn, for inviting me. And I hope I didn't irritate anybody, but I really think it's very important that we become a little more aggressive amongst ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. No, your comments were right on. You're a dedicated community leader in Chinatown and throughout the city. And you do an exceptional job. I was with you last week on a cleanup in Chinatown with some students. I think they were from Boston University. A group of Asian students that did a tremendous job helping us.
Great job. They did a great job.
They did a great job. I'm going to open it up to the prior panel. Maybe John or Brian can weigh in on some of the comments that Tony or Mary mentioned. I know there's a lot there, and I just wanted to say thank you to Mary for being here. Thank you to my friend Tony for being here. My wife's family owns a place up in Maine next to Tony's house. And so I used to love going up to see Tony's mother and father. They're wonderful, wonderful people. So always enjoyed being with you, Tony, as well. So
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Tony. So having said that, Brian or John, can you kind of weigh in a little bit and respond to Tony and Mary? Brian, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, to Mary's point, yeah, we have worked in the past, I think, going back a few years. I went to a few ACA meetings. The situation in Chinatown, I'm certainly willing to come up there and, you know, now that we can hopefully get back to meetings, I think we'll start to get back into the community engagement piece of a lot of the work that we're doing and trying to do. It's very difficult to piece things together one by one. We need to come together as a group to get a solution to everything. The suggestion that it's obviously dire need for a bigger conversation, but the big problem over there is trash is out all day long. So this commercial, it's probably one of the most mixed use areas in the city as far as residential and commercial trash. So there's a, some, whether it's confusion or it's just too much of, it's a little chaotic when you think about the commercial trash overnight and then the residential, it's almost like there's trash on the sidewalks all the time. So there's certainly some things we can try to do. And I'm willing to sit down with you and your team and the residents along with my team and try to work something out. The businesses need to be involved. There's a lot of issues there with commercial trash. Violators of commercial trash, putting trash out on residential collection days, mixing it in, code enforcement's been finding a lot of evidence on that. So there's a lot to be done there. And I think, we really need to take a deeper dive into what's happening. But the city can't do it by themselves. So it'd be great to work with you and your, the business development team over there, the business groups. So certainly continue this conversation.
Thank you, Brian. And I also failed to mention at the beginning, Eric Prentice has been a very invaluable person as well, working with us throughout the city. So I want to say thank you to Eric. Brian, what about any comments you want to respond to? Comments that you want to respond to that Tony made as well?
Yeah, for Tony, for the certainly if there's alleyways and there's trash coming in the back and there's dumpsters there, if there's no lids on the dumpsters, we, send a case into 311. If there's open containers, that's a problem. The trash should go in the dumpster needs to be closed. If the dumpster's not closed, obviously it's creating an issue. And even on a windy day, it's going to create a bigger issue. So, I mean, those things behind the buildings are difficult for us to inspect because it's not part of the daily route, driving in behind buildings and stuff like that would be helpful. In terms of, inspection or monitoring surveillance, obviously we would recommend that the landlords or the owners of the properties would have some sort of cameras if that's a problem, or if there's any kind of, for even safety monitoring. But if there's a trash issue and, it would be difficult to have surveillance everywhere. And, that would be, if we could find license plates of people dumping things, and that would be helpful, but I don't think that's feasible. But on each individual homeowner, I think it's something to look at. If you do have a dumpster in the property, if you're having consistent issues, people coming back there, if it is if it's not well lit back there off the house, it's going to welcome those people to come in and dump things. So anything that the property owners can do on that way.
Brian, is it too much to ask of the sanitation company where we have dumpsters all across the city that are serviced by the city of Boston, not by private sanitation companies, but are actually maintained and serviced by the city of Boston? Is it asking too much of the sanitation company to make a note or report of any dumpster sites that really don't conform to the regulations? Let's say there's no lid, or the trash is overflowing, or the area around the dumpster isn't being maintained. There might be old vegetation and tree stumps and branches piled up, and the site is just not being maintained. Is that too much to I don't know what the agreement is with the sanitation, to at least notify the city when they're servicing a dumpster that just isn't in conformity?
That's not something that we have them do. Typically, the dumpsters are either owned by the homeowner or the apartment building, or they're rented from another contractor. The service provider for the city of Boston is not necessarily the owner of that dumpster, nor are they responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of it, just for the servicing of it. So anything that's, if the wheel breaks off the bottom, it's not the hauler's fault
Right.
or, responsibility to fix it. So that's, highly unlikely that we'd be able to do that. If we do have issues with, some of the smaller dumpsters, if it is broken wheel on it, they can't push it sometimes, so they'll call us and let us know. They'll dump it, and then we'll reach out to the management company. So it does happen. It's just not, there's no daily audit of what's good, what's no good. It'd be helpful, but that's a stretch. But if you have any specific locations, you can certainly email me.
And just on one other quick issue, as you can see, the council is very concerned about development and construction sites and everything. And the point that I was trying to make in my written testimony is that if that developer does an effective job at rodent control on their construction site, more than likely the rodents are going to go next door, so to speak. They're going to be forced out of those sites and going next door. I raised this about a year ago, and I don't know if BPDA and you guys have taken a look at it, but wouldn't it be fair, especially for Article 80 projects, small and large projects, that the developer also be responsible to financing, baiting, and control within a certain distance of the construction site, so that the direct abutters can get some relief from the impact of the construction site right next door to them?
I could answer that, Tony. The currently, I think it's 150 feet. If we can prove that the project created the rodent issue, we can up to 150 feet currently. And so we are looking at that and other
good.
construction stuff around things that we can do better around pest control in construction. Your other comment on lots unkept by developers while they're in the community process of
Yes.
zoning relief, there's never a time where a property owner is allowed to not maintain his lot. So if there is a lot being not maintained for whatever reason, the property is vacant, or they're going through a zoning board of appeals community process, the property always has to be maintained under the sanitary code. So if there is an issue, we write the violation. Our violations aren't a fine. They're an abatement that ends up in housing court eventually. And sometimes with properties that are going through the zoning board of appeals, the ownership can be changing, and sometimes the title search and finding the correct owner who's actually, we can only hold the owner of the property liable for the condition of the property. And so sometimes that isn't the person who's trying to redevelop the property. Sometimes that happens, the sale of the property happens after the property receives the relief. And so anytime there is a property that has rodents, that is overgrown, is not being maintained, 311 is always the best way to put in a complaint. We have a new system where 311 complaints go directly to our inspectors, their handhelds. And the average time is 24 hours that we can respond to those complaints.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Brian, for all your help.
Councilor Flynn, may I say something, Councilor Flynn? It's Mary Chen.
Of course, Mary.
Okay, I really genuinely appreciate this opportunity. And again, thanks. And I thank Councilor Braden, Councilor Edwards, and yourself. But I'm trying to understand the total process. what is the next move? I think we definitely need to meet again in this format, yes. But what is the next step here? Because if I believe that I need to justify my request for increased fines, but also more fines, where do we go from here? I think that's so critical. And I also know that we talk a lot about abatement. Let's push the construction people, the development people to be responsible not just for their site, but also 150 feet and beyond. I really think it still boils down to how to reduce the population of these rodents. And I'd like a better understanding of how dry ice works. Is that a way to prevent to reduce the population of rodents, or is there another way that people are talking about it? Because we could just go on and on about, getting rid of shooting down the rodents and then they move on to another place or whatever, or we poison them a little bit and they move on and on. So what is a larger sort of solution to this growing rodent situation? It isn't just that they're just growing. We need to figure out a way to actually destroy them, actually. So those are my two questions.
Well, thank you, Mary, and both were excellent points. Where we go from here, I was going to, as the chairman, keep this in committee, which would mean that I can call for a working group that would meet periodically. I want to have a working group maybe that meets once a month,
Yes.
especially from now until the City of Boston budget comes out.
Good.
And my goal as chair of neighborhood services is to educate the public,
Yeah.
and my colleagues as well about the important work that Public Works and Inspectional Service, Parks Department as well, they do on these critical issues, and to advocate for more funding so we can do more programming. John, you mentioned inspectors. How many inspectors do you guys have?
We have 13 inspectors who are licensed pest control applicators.
Okay. So Mary, one of the things I would want to do is, at the next working session, certainly invite the city administration here, but get a better idea of, do we have enough inspectors? Which I think we don't.
We do not. We do not.
Do we need to increase that budget of inspectors, and making sure when we vote on the city budget that we have enough money in there for programming, such as get a better explanation on dry ice.
If I
We have
may,
funding for dry ice in other ways to combat pest control issues as well. So that's what I hope to do, is put it in committee and meet once a month, stay in contact, because this issue isn't going away. And the residents deal with this issue every day, and it's up to us as community leaders to provide the best quality of life for our residents, for our neighbors. And that's something that's important to me. This is probably one of the most critical issues facing the city. It doesn't get talked about. Certainly climate resiliency would get talked about, but this is an environmental justice problem as well. It impacts many in the immigrant community, as you rightfully said, Mary.
Yeah.
Chinatown has the highest asthma rate of any neighborhood in New England. That's an environmental injustice. We have a high pest control problem as well. We have other environmental challenges. So let me put this in committee. We'll stay in contact. We'll continue to work together. But at this time, I know there are some people that are waiting that want to provide public testimony. Let me give them a chance to provide public testimony. And I know we received public testimony, Mary, from the Chinatown Residents Association as well. I didn't get a chance to read it yet, but I'm going to read it.
if I can just say one more thing,
Sure.
because you know me, Ed, I will keep talking. So you're gonna
I
tell
know.
me not to talk. Okay, what I want to say is that if you increase the fines, you'll be able to spend more money on such things as inspectional service. The inspectional service team is so underrated in terms of a solution here. The more inspections you can keep out there, the more fines they can, and education can be, can be doled out. I really think that there is a relationship between, increasing fines and therefore having the ability to get the right kind of people on the streets. This is the way to do it. So I'll stop there, Ed. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Your points are excellent.
Also, can I just jump in there real quick?
Points were excellent. Go ahead, Brian.
I just want to follow up on the fines. I agree with the, increasing the fines is certainly a way to change some behaviors, but the illegal dumping fines, Counselor, is coming from the Mass General Law, Chapter 270. So we're going to need assistance from the state on that if we're looking to change anything. The smaller violations that, that's $25 to $50 ones, those are under City of Boston Code, Municipal Code, under Chapter 23. So we can take a look if you wanted to have somebody look at, the ordinances that were created in 2008. They might be a little outdated. Could use some work. So.
Thank you, Brian. That would be great if we can stay in contact and discuss that. Certainly at the working group that I hope to have probably in the next 30 days. But let's discuss that. That should be part of it, as Mary rightfully said, is increasing the fines. But there's a lot of issues we need to continue to work on. If we don't solve this issue, we can't tackle even bigger issues if we can't address this issue and solve it. And it's this will never get solved. But if we work together, we can provide the best quality of life for residents as we possibly can. And it's about working together. It's not a sexy issue, but it's an issue that impacts every neighborhood. And it's about working together. We have great city and dedicated employees that love their job and love the neighborhoods in working with the activists. Let's continue to work together. Having said that, I see the good-looking gentleman there from Andrew Square Civic Association. He's looking to testify. He has his hand up.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Thank you, Councilor and Chairman Flynn, for this, and all the other councilors and city agencies involved with this much-needed initiative. If I may first read a statement prepared and drafted by the Andrew Square Civic Association, my colleagues, President Linda Zablocki and Vice President Patty McCormick, and the whole body. Andrew Square Civic Association is grateful to Councilors Flynn, Edwards, Braden for holding this important hearing. Recent reports of Boston being the second most rat-infested metro area in the U.S. came as no surprise to the residents of Andrew Square. Our neighborhood has always had a problem with rodents, but in the last few years, it has become increasingly troublesome. Between household trash and construction sites, we are inundated with trash and garbage. One recent example, 5 disabled cars in one block had to be towed to the local garage due to the wires being chewed upon by rodents. During this time frame, we had been in touch with ISD to notify them of many sightings. The inspector was extremely attentive, invaded stores, fly at homes, issued fines. They did what they have been doing for years. Can we think out of the box? Give them more tools to be proactive instead of reactive. Our neighborhood has seen a growth in housing, and the units being built do not have adequate room for trash storage. We should not continue to approve housing without proper storage. Is it time to propose 2 trash pickups a week? And that's a question. Can some of the new taxes collected from all these new units be appropriated towards this? The fine structures does not deter residents from following existing protocol. We find many of the problem properties with improper trash disposal are rentals, and similar to the noise ordinance, the landlord finds it easier to pay the menial fine than address the tenant who is paying him the quote unquote exorbitant rents. Fines should not only be increased dramatically, but structured to be increased for each offense. ISD needs to revisit the requirement for baiting with developers. We know the South Boston waterfront requirements are stricter. With all of the building going on in South Boston neighborhood and all that is to come, we should have the same requirements for the developers in the Andrews Square area. We feel residents should be informed and empowered. A public service campaign on social media would also be a way to get people engaged in solutions. And if I may offer my personal and professional input, my name is John Pekatowski. I'm on the ASCA board. I'm a lifelong resident, small business owner, registered small business owner in the Andrews Square section of South Boston. I have a professional working relationship with several of the larger developers in the Andrews Square area of South Boston. If I may first speak on the illegal dumping and trash. A lot of good points have been brought up, and rightly so. Just to touch on some of the topics that came through, and it was stated in this meeting already, but just to elaborate on it.
John, I'm not cutting you off, but just take another minute, okay?
Yep. So at these transfer stations, a lot of the smaller contractors are turned away because of minimal loads, minimal fees. A lot of the larger developers using cameras, site security, and fencing are doing remarkable at keeping the illegal dumping to a minimum on their properties. In dealing with the rodent and pest control, as was stated, whether it's a short form, long form, anything, small project review, large project review, the rodent control sanitation department has to be implemented before the permit can be issued, which is a very good procedural policy in effect. I think increased fines, holding illegal fees and dumping to a higher degree of accountability is key. Basically going back to the $1,000 fine that can amount to basically a pickup truck load at the transfer station does not commiserate with what the fines and fees are being charged at these haul trash transfer stations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your comments. They were well said. If anyone else has any comments from the public, this is public testimony. Can you raise your yellow hand and we'll take some public testimony at this time. Kerry, I don't see any public testimony. Can you just confirm that? Oh, Sai Wu?
Yes, I want to say something, yes.
Okay.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Sai. It's your turn. Glad to have
Oh,
you.
yeah. Okay, I live in Chinatown, so my condo always get a fine because of trash. Some reason is the resident or not. I mean the tenant. They are moving in. They are not sure what to do, but that it should be get fined to these people. I mean, they don't do good job. But other time, people come to Chinatown to eat. So a lot of time they leave the small trash just on the street, like my street, all the time. So we got a fine for these people. I mean, that is not fair for the people like I live in this building, and I had to pay for these people the fine. What they did. So I'm concerned when you increase the fine, and the fine go to my condo. I had to one of them to pay. Sometimes the visitors, they leave a lot of small trash without bag on the street all the time. So this is trouble for me.
Thank you. Sai, do you live on that building on the corner of Beach Street?
Yeah, 42 Beach Street. Yeah, 42 Beach Street. Harrison Avenue.
Yeah, I know.
That's I saw all the time. You know, they people come to eat. In Chinatown, usually, you know, the restaurant open very late. So nighttime, without, you know, they sometimes they left over. They just leave on the street. So there's nothing to do. I can control for these visits. So we got the fine all the time.
Yeah, thank you, Cy. That's an issue we've been dealing with. I had a conversation with the Chinatown Residents Association last week about that, and with Eric Prentice about that from the city of Boston. That's been an ongoing problem. There's no place for that building to put their trash. There's no alley, or there's no backyard to put trash. So it is a major concern. It's something we are aware of. We're continuing to work on that. I thank you. I thank you for testifying. Your testimony was excellent. Let's continue to work together, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just looking to see if anyone else has their yellow hand up.
This is Mary again.
Mary, can you hold on for 1 second? I just want to see if there's anyone else testifying. Okay, Mary, if you have anything else you want to add, please, you can add it now.
Thank you. Yeah, Cy, I totally agree and understand the problem of tourists as well as people who actually live in Chinatown. When it comes to trying to figure out what to do with an empty bubble tea cup, or you know, or takeout order box that is being that needs to be disposed of. It's been a delicate balance, and maybe Brian can speak to this. It's been a very delicate balance that is actually impossible to achieve, where I've asked many times that the city put out more public barrels so that people who are needing to, you know, to get rid of a cup or a takeout order box when they're walking, they don't know where to put the stuff. They can't put it in their pocket, so they don't know where to go. And so I've asked them for more barrels, but I understand their dilemma, because the more barrels you put out that are public, the more opportunity for essentially illegal dumping. So that people who are living in, you know, in these these tenancies, and their landlords do not give them barrels. They don't train them on how to, or they don't teach them on how to and when to put out their trash. You know, I see people going out to go to work every day, and what they have in their hands as they're leaving their little apartments is little bags, shopping bags. Okay, they fill up their trash and they dump it into a public barrel. And I can understand why they're doing it. They have no choice. They don't know where to go. As I said, landlords don't give them real barrels, and landlords don't give them trash bags. So they dump there. And so I've seen this. I've had this argument before with the city. They don't want to have more public barrels out there because people abuse them. They don't know how to use them, and they abuse them. And then we see this overflow of trash coming out of these public barrels. And I think at least twice or three times a day, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, somebody comes around, the trucks come around and they empty, but obviously still not enough. But we have this overflow, it's really ugly overflow of trash coming out of these barrels all over Chinatown. So I appreciate, Cy, how you feel, and it's unfortunate that that owners, condo owners, building owners will feel that they're being abused, but because there is no place to throw their trash out. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Cy. And these are conversations that we can continue talking about in the working session. I'd love to have Cy testify again and provide some more input. Certainly the panel, certainly the community residents, open it up to other people as well. Having said that, again, I want to thank the panel for being here, to John, to Brian, and to John. I want to say thank you to the civic leaders that have testified here today, especially to Tony and to and to Mary, who I both know very well, and they do excellent work in their communities. I want to say thank you to Councilor Braden, who's been an outstanding colleague, as has Councilor Edwards, but they really focus on the nuts and bolts of city government, and that's what we're here for, is to improve the quality of life of residents. I want to say thank you to the people that provided public testimony as well. Having said that,
Mr. Chair, we have a Fong here who has their hand raised for public testimony, so we're going to give him a chance there to speak.
okay, Kerry. Fong? Hello, sir? Fong,
Hello?
Fong, next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. It's your turn.
Okay, thank you. I've been raising my hand. Yeah, my name is Fong Chong. I'm a property manager from Taitung Village Apartments. Mary Chen from AACA is, where she is in Taitung Village is very close by, walking distance.
Yeah.
So Mary has said so many things that it was on the target that we have been experiencing the same thing about rodent, about illegal dumping, about almost everything, like the local neighborhood is so dirty, so forth and so on. So she was on the target. So I don't want to repeat that. There's a few things I like to mention is that, we had, before pandemic, we have residents here and staff here went out to Chinatown, like 25 of us went out Chinatown and do cleaning throughout Chinatown. Guess what? 2 times, every single time, it was spotless clean. Within 24 hours, everything pretty much restored to, 50% of trash going back out there in Chinatown. So this is something like, it's a bad habit. It's a behavior that, people around Chinatown or people come into Chinatown buying drinks and trash everywhere. That's something that definitely I heard the city group here, had a lot of plan going on and, try to get on target. We try to meet monthly, so on and so on. So this is something that definitely, is a good thing to go on. And that is what we, observe around the neighborhood here. So for Taitung Village alone here, we talk about rodent and rat. As a site here, we have so many hundred residents live around here, and we done whatever we could and do about pest control within the site here. We pay a lot of money. We had a pest control guy that we hire come here and do things every single month for the past 20 years. But somehow, because some other neighbors, I would say nearby neighbors and, landlord around it, they don't have such program within themselves. So end up everything, trash and rodent happen every single night. I have my guard work here, every single day for so many years. And, the rat and rodents are running around from across street coming to Taitung Village. So whatever funding, whatever expense that we put on, it seems like it didn't go too far because of the neighborhood, don't have the same mentality of maintaining this pest control and it's everywhere is so dirty and it's just unbelievable. So another thing is when the city inspector come by, before pandemic, they come out and do inspection, throughout our parking lot. We have several dumpsters around it, and we got citation for overflow the trash. So this is something that we were not too happy. So I appeal a few times, not rejecting those tickets is not fair. And I heard, one of the Chinatown neighborhood owner were talking about, again, we didn't create this, but, we have this kind of trash, into our building. So it's a similar mentality that I just want to bring it up here. So from the city point of view, I mean,
Can you take 30 more seconds, Fong?
sure.
Okay.
So what I like to mention is when city inspector come out and citing the tickets and so forth and so on, which is a good thing to do, but it really crack down to where the source is coming from. So this whole group here, is a great. We need to come up some kind of strategy to tackle all the little detail until we get rid of all the problem right here.
Well, thank you, Fong. I think you said it the best, Fong. We're going to come up with a strategy in our working session. We're going to work together with this city employees, city officials, with the community, and come up with a strategy that improves the quality of life for residents. But also, as we go into the budget season, we need to make sure that these dedicated departments that do exceptional work on these issues have the resources, the funding, and the personnel to do their jobs. So I'm going to make sure that I educate myself and my colleagues as well to about this critical issue. Having said that, on behalf of myself, on behalf of Councilor Braden, on behalf of Councilor Edwards and all of my colleagues, we want to say thank you to you for
Can I
being
add
here.
one?
I don't, no, we're just wrapping up right now, Fong, I'm sorry. On behalf of myself, Councilor Edwards and Councilor Braden, we're gonna go into a working session, probably in the next 30 days. We're gonna have another discussion about these topics. We're going to invite the city officials as well. I wanna say thank you to the City Council Central staff, to Kerry, and to my team as well, Sophia, that helped me during this process. Again, thank you, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.